From the National Newsroom of the Canadian Press, I'm Jason White. Markets on both sides of the border plunged today as the reality of a U.S.-Canada trade war took further hold. The TSX lost almost 400 points, while the blue chip Dow was down nearly 900, and the Nasdaq was 4% lower. The dim numbers come as Wall Street questions how much pain U.S. President Donald Trump is willing for the economy to endure in order to get what he wants. Trump imposed 25% duties on most Canadian imports last week, only to say he was rolling them back on items covered by the North American Free Trade Pact until April 2nd. On Parliament Hill, newly minted Liberal leader Mark Carney says it'll be a quick transition, but the exact timeline for him to become Prime Minister remains unclear. Carney spoke with caucus members on Parliament Hill this afternoon and had a meeting with outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
We discussed the most important issues for our country, obviously including Canada and U.S. relations, issues of national security, and yes, the transition between the Prime Minister and myself. That transition will be seamless and it will be quick.
Carney still has to pick a cabinet, but he has tapped former cabinet minister Marco Mendicino to be his incoming chief of staff. British Columbia Premier David Eby is firing back at escalating tariff threats from the United States. The province has now expanded its U.S. alcohol ban on American liquor to all U.S. beer, wine, and alcohol.
The reaction of many British Columbians, myself included, is if the president's so interested in Canadian water, then we're going to help him out by letting him keep his watery beer.
Eby was referencing a New York Times editorial about U.S. President Donald Trump making waves about redrawing the border in the hopes of getting his hands on Canada's water. The president of Ukraine has arrived in Saudi Arabia ahead of a meeting between his team and American officials.
A source close to President Zelensky told ABC News Ukraine will propose a mutual pause on long-range strikes from the air and sea when it meets with US officials in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. The source said Ukraine wants the partial ceasefire to test if Russia would respect it. Russian officials so far publicly, though, have not signaled support for the idea, which was first floated by France. President Zelensky has now arrived in Saudi Arabia to meet with its ruler, but he will not take direct part in the US talks on Tuesday. Patrick Reevell, ABC News, at the Foreign Desk.
Pope Francis is no longer in imminent danger from double pneumonia, but doctors in Rome are keeping him hospitalized. The Vatican says the Pope's medical drug therapy requires him to stay in hospital. Francis was hospitalized last month with what was just a bad case of bronchitis. This is the Canadian Press. In sports, the Edmonton Oilers are looking to extend their win streak to 3 games tonight when they visit the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres, meantime, are aiming to snap a 6-game skid. Elsewhere in the NHL, the Ottawa Senators host Detroit, and the Toronto Maple Leafs visit Utah. Bo Bichette and Addison Barger both homered as the Toronto Blue Jays defeated the Houston Astros 8-3 in spring training action in Dunedin, Florida. In basketball, the Toronto Raptors host Washington tonight. Canadian sharpshooter Shai Gilgeous-Alexander says it's an honor to be in the conversation for the NBA's Most Valuable Player Award.
It's something to talk about. It is entertaining. It's part of the sport, like individual performances. It's an honor to be in the conversation in itself and be regarded as such.
The 26-year-old Toronto native and point guard is leading the league in scoring, and his Oklahoma City Thunder currently sit first in the NBA's Western Conference. From the Canadian Press, I'm Jason White.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. For more of today's top stories, visit thecanadianpressnews.ca.